Welcome back to Write Out Loud, the podcast about storytelling, writing, and literary creativity. I'm joined by my soulful, sensational, stellar, spectacular, and soothing Christina. Hello, my dear.
Soulful and soothing.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Don't you
I like that. Soulful.
Well, we are touching on a topic we discussed a while back, imposter syndrome. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how imposter syndrome manifests and really what it means. And this is going to be a two-parter. This is all about laying the groundwork for what imposter syndrome is. And we're going to just really dive deep into it. And hopefully by the end of this two-parter, you'll have some practical tools that you can use and take away that help you deal with this, because it can absolutely get in your way if you let it.
Yeah, it'll stop people from writing because all they can do is sit in their imposter syndrome saying, I'm not good enough.
Yeah. So you talked about a client of yours that it manifests, in a certain way for her. Talk to us about that.
Well, there were actually two simultaneously that it was like really kind of happening in the same week. One posted on Facebook, she had just read Stephen King's new book.
Okay.
And she said something like, I need to get to the point where I can write like Stephen King. And in my discussion with her, she's only been writing for, she's been writing for a lot longer, I should say. But she's actually only finished like 3 or 4 books. She's never published anything yet. She's kind of working on her craft and writing and getting them prepped. And, she wants to take her shot with New York. So we're concentrating on, that aspect. So I said, how can you compare yourself of writing for 4 years to someone who's been writing for 40 or 50 years?
Sure.
There's a big difference, and you've got to allow yourself, to get there. Simultaneously, like I said, it was maybe just a couple days later, I got a call from another client who was upset because she's been reading a lot. And she said, the books are all crap. And how can these people publish this crap? And I can't even finish one book. It was like, how do these people not know that they're writing crap? And I said, well, they don't have imposter syndrome. And they don't, because if you don't have imposter syndrome, you're going to publish your stuff and think it's great. And for, some of the audience, it probably is great. But for someone who is working on their craft, like my client is, you're going to recognize that your writing can be better. And that's kind of where I want to start with imposter syndrome, is the idea that imposter syndrome is not about what we've been taught that it's about, that you're comparing yourself to someone else's writing. It's when you recognize that someone else's writing is better than yours. It's not that you're an imposter. It is that I think subconsciously you're ready to work on your craft and become better.
Yeah.
So you and I were talking a little bit beforehand. Something I don't know if I've ever said on this podcast, but every single one of my clients has heard it. Every single one, because this is the basis of where my business in editing and author coaching comes from, is the fact that I have been in this publishing industry long enough, 25, 30 years now, that I have recognized the people that come and go. So these aren't the Stephen Kings of the world. The Stephen Kings of the world are a different breed. They seem to understand or just automatically do it. They improve their writing.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they write, they challenge themselves to write a better book. They think of a new idea and, go with it and write better. The people that fall away and stop publishing, I really believe it's because they stopped growing as a writer.
Hmm.
They either, were told by, and this is kind of a New York thing, not necessarily indie publishing. You're not going to get it as much as you would with New York. Once you make it and you're making multi-million-dollar contracts and stuff, there comes this little bit of arrogance that comes with that, where they don't think they need an editor anymore. They don't think they need to listen to somebody's critiques because I have made it.
Mm-hmm.
I am making $1 million in contracts. But what every single one of those has forgotten is the fact that their readers are growing, and they will grow out of your writing. We as readers, the more we read, the better we become as humans.
Mm-hmm.
We learn, we have empathy, we feel characters, we grow as human beings. There isn't a bad person alive who has a stack of books, and reads ferociously. Otherwise, they wouldn't be bad human beings. They would develop a conscience. They would not be drunk on power. They would be, drunk on humanity. They would be drunk on empathy. And those things do not make bad people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we as humans, as readers, we grow. And that's why you grow out of reading YA. You grow out of, or some of us do and some of us don't. I
was like, wait now.
But we do grow. And if the YA can't reach us at the level we're at, we will stop reading that YA. Like I said, it's different with classics. With classics, and that includes the YA classics, you're going to find what you need to find even as an adult within those books. So I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about you as a person, as a reader, are continually growing. And you're going to grow out of someone unless they also grow with their writing. And so for me, the reason writers continue to be a success, Stephen King, and why you compare yourself to Stephen King is because, you see that growth and you want to have that growth. And so this is something I mentioned in a podcast, but we never really delved into it, is that the idea of imposter syndrome isn't necessarily I'm not good enough. It really is your subconscious saying, rather, that you can be good enough. Mm-hmm. You just either have more to learn, more to overcome, more to grow. Mm-hmm. And that you're ready for that, because you don't recognize you're ready to grow until you're ready to grow. And then something happens. You were telling me earlier that you learned from Mel Robbins that working through an emotion, you let yourself feel it, and then you continue on. You work, let yourself feel it, and you move forward. It's similar with imposter syndrome. You recognize that there is better writing out there, but you also recognize, if you can recognize that better writing, you're ready to level up. You are ready to level up your writing. That doesn't mean you don't have work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just means that, you're recognizing that you can be better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
we were talking about just the various ways that it manifests, right? That each person is going to be different. You're going to have imposter syndrome for one person who is legit just comparing themselves to Stephen King, like your client.
Yeah.
And going, holy crap, I can never do that. And again, we'll talk about ways that we can kind of deal with all of these different manifestations, but there's others in the sense that there are some of those that are very afraid of what people might say.
Yes.
So they are doing the work, but they're kind of like not ready to put it out there, right? Because
Yeah.
again, they're just afraid of they're not going to be good enough, and people are going to say maybe mean things about them, or just aren't going to like it and aren't going to enjoy it, right? There's you had told a story too about another. Actually, I think it was the same client, right? That was saying like these other authors are putting out crap, and
Yes,
I don't understand, right? But
yeah,
it may come from a place of I'm not quite sure how to get this vision that's in my head
right,
out on paper or ink or screen,
right,
whatever the case might be, in a way that's clear to my vision,
right,
and that
right.
I see all these others that can do that. I'm just like, it gets
Yeah.
frustrating, right? So it's all the various ways that it manifests for each person, and it might be different for you listening. You might have another take on that of what causes yours or the way that you look at it. But Christina's absolutely right. When you boil it down, it's you've already recognized in yourself that it is possible. This is now your chance to do something about it to get you there.
Right.
And you have to be able to take that moment, take that breath, and realize what's happening so that you can make that mental adjustment.
Yeah. I actually have a very good friend who says that if you have dreamed it, you've already achieved it. You just haven't gotten there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't come across a dream, a thought, an idea without the possibility of that being a reality.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, for the sake of this podcast, we're talking about storytelling. So I have not once met a client who didn't tell me that they had people living in their head,
Mm-hmm.
that their characters weren't talking to them, that stuff wasn't happening.
Yep.
So if you've got that, and to my client's point, everyone that was, turning out this crap. Now, I do have a thought that everybody who writes and publishes, there's an audience for you.
Sure.
So this client just happens to like better writing than, some of the stuff that's out there. But I also think it's also the universe telling her that there is an audience maybe that isn't being served
Mm-hmm.
by that better writing. So if she can get herself to get those stories down. And here's the thing, when you were talking about not being able to get the story that's in your head onto paper, you've seen the meme of the iceberg that has, here's the story in my head, and it goes all the way down. And here's what I can write down. The thing is that this is where I fall back onto the Nora Roberts way of thinking is, I can't fix a blank page. So try to get what's in the head onto paper. And that's not your only shot.
Mm-hmm.
You get 100 shots after it's on paper. You have, not forever, because hopefully we would like to get this published, out the door. So you can't take all your time,
Mm-hmm.
but you can take as many drafts as you need in order to get it right. And that's, again, where it comes down to where you view imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just saying, oh, imposter syndrome. Everybody suffers from it at one point or another, which I believe to be true. But the idea that, okay, don't dwell on the imposter syndrome. Recognize that the imposter syndrome means you recognize the better writing.
Mm-hmm.
That means you can also recognize better writing in yourself. And again, it doesn't mean that you're going to write perfectly on the page the first time. It just means you are capable of growing as a writer, of doing things differently. I was talking to a client a couple weeks ago, and there was a missing piece in her story. And we were kind of brainstorming and trying to think of, okay, what is the solution here? What's the door number 3? And I had this little bit of a light bulb moment because I had just finished binging Hijack on Apple TV, and you and I talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Hijack is what I call, or what J.J. Abrams calls, mystery box. It means you aren't getting the whole story in the beginning. And in fact, when I was watching with my family, they kept asking, what's going on? What's going on? What does that mean? What does that mean? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on either. We have to sit and watch it.
You have as much information as I do.
Exactly. And that's just it. That's the key right there is, you as a storyteller don't always have to have all of the information in the beginning in order to start telling your story. And that's the same thing with working through imposter syndrome. Don't say, I have to have the solution to imposter syndrome right now because I have to work through it and I have to feel it and I have to get past it. No. Just like Mel Robbins said with your emotions, sit with the imposter syndrome and say, okay, I can sit here and compare my writing to someone else. And as you said, I can be jealous, I can be mad, I can be angry, I can be all these things. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that you must not do is stay there. Mm-hmm. You have to recognize at some point, if you see that your writing can improve, then you can work on improving it. Mm-hmm. Again, it might not come out perfect the first time, but if you continue to work on improving it, it will improve. Mm-hmm. It's just like reading when you were a kid and you'd be pronouncing words for the first time, either in your head or out loud while you're reading. You had to grow and learn new words. So it's just like that with writing. You have to continue to write. And just in the act of writing in itself, you're going to start improving. That may mean doing more drafts. Perhaps those people that hit publish, that my client was like, this stuff is crap. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they didn't do 2 or 3 drafts. Maybe they did a draft and then sent it off to, a copy editor, got the grammar fixed. And I think everyone's stories can improve if they do 2 or 3 drafts, because you can layer things in. You can figure a story out. You can, really work a more complex story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there are some people out there too that go into this, or their manifestation of it is, there's all these really great writers out there. There's no room for me. Like, I can't, I'm mad about it. I'm jealous about it. I have this imposter syndrome because I'm afraid that there's just not that room for me anymore, because there's so many people already doing all this writing. And it just, again, it's not a zero sum game.
Yeah.
Right. There's enough success for everybody. There's enough.
Yep.
Enough room for everybody to get their voice out there.
And there is this thing that I think everybody kind of discounts, is if you've got this story in your head and it won't leave you alone, maybe it's because you're the one that's supposed to tell it. And then, so we're going to take vampires, for example. Everybody's writing vampires. And so you're sitting there going, well, I've got this vampire story. But is it unique? Is it, so interesting, because in the same interview that sparked this conversation with us, Britt Marling is one of the creators of the OA. Mm-hmm. And one of my all-time favorite shows, and I hope to God someday that they finish it. I did not realize, so she and her writing partner are very good friends with the Duffer Brothers, Stranger Things creators. And their shows came out basically simultaneously on Netflix. And what I didn't put together, I mean, I'm a fan of both shows, mm-hmm. but she said that, so she's got this theory that, stories come from someplace in the universe and we all kind of pull the threads. Ether. Yeah, ether. Yep. And she said, because otherwise, how do 2 people, 2 sets of people who don't know each other initially, write such similar stories? And I'm thinking, similar stories. And she goes on to say, both stories center around a psychic girl
Mm-hmm.
with nosebleeds who, have a group of boys whom, go on this journey with her. And I'm thinking, whoa, that's true. Both stories are centered around girls who are psychic, who
Mm-hmm.
have nosebleeds, who have this group of boys. And again, hearkening back to the vampire, if you've got a unique story and you're the only one who is telling this kind of vampire story, then yeah, it's worth telling.
Mm-hmm.
That's just it. And, we're going to go into it more in part 2,
Mm-hmm.
but this idea of why we're afraid to write stories in the sense that we're afraid of what people will think.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's what stops people from doing anything creative is you think it's already been done, or you're going to compare yourself to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
or many numerous things that stops you from doing that. One other thing I do want to say about imposter syndrome, because this really was sparked from first an interview with Billie Eilish and her brother with, I don't even know what it was. It was more than a year ago. And it was right after I had seen the Barbie movie. And she was talking about how she was in a really bad place before the creators of the Barbie movie came to her and said, we'd like you to write the theme song. Here's, the themes in the movie. And she wrote, to this day, I think it is one of her best songs that she's written. She wrote it with her brother, of course.
Sure.
And, she was in that imposter syndrome place before that song came to her because she had won all these Grammys. She had won 1 Oscar at that time. And where else did she go at age 23?
Mm.
And the thing is that in a second interview I saw just recently within the last month, that she said she had no idea where she could go. And now she's got 2 Oscars under her belt, even more Grammys possibly on the way, with a ton of Grammy nominations as we record this podcast. And what she said was she went to a vocal coach. And so you think, I kind of hearken Billie Eilish to someone like a Stephen King, okay, in the writing world, where Stephen King has gotten the accolades. He's gotten the, great stories, millions in sales and, all that kind of stuff. Where does he go from here? Well, Billie actually took vocal lessons
Mm-hmm.
and realized that she was able to hit notes she never thought she could hit. And so with this new album that's been nominated for all these Grammys now, she hit notes she never knew she could hit. So, again, coming back to that imposter syndrome, sometimes I wonder if imposter syndrome is there to spark a fire, light a fire under you
Mm-hmm.
to become better.
Mm-hmm.
And that if someone like Billie Eilish can say to herself, I've got a ton of Grammys, I've got more nominations, I've got 2 Oscars under my belt, but you know what? I think I'm going to take some vocal lessons.
Sure.
I think that's just, to me, that was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote down a quote from that interview because I just thought it was very insightful, because she said it was gratifying, satisfying, and so fulfilling to learn that, things about my own voice,
Mm-hmm.
that my own voice wasn't aware, I'm paraphrasing now, that she could do. So, yeah. So to me, imposter syndrome should light a fire under you
Mm-hmm.
to become better,
100%.
to do better.
It reminds me of like Tiger Woods, as good as he was at his prime, at his peak, still needing a coach, still needing somebody to help him
Yes.
improve his game, right? Tony Romo,
Yes.
all of these star athletes that have to the same thing, have all of these achievements that you'd be like, okay, they don't, what could somebody possibly teach them? Because they've already done it all. And, Tom Daly, I mean, all of them have had coaches. So yeah, we're always always in a place where we can challenge ourselves and learn more. Which is a
I
good
think
thing.
so.
Should always
I
feel
think
good.
so. Yeah. I do, I don't know where this comes from, but for me, it is, I always feel like, I can grow and learn. Even though I'm quote unquote an expert on this podcast,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean I'm not still learning things.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that simultaneously I may teach things to my clients, but they're also teaching me things too. Like I said, if it hadn't been for client number 1 comparing herself to Stephen King, and then 2 days later, hearing from client number 2 saying,
Yeah.
and that's when I went, whoa, wait a minute. This imposter syndrome
Yep.
is something to take a deeper look at, and not necessarily something bad. It's just a sign that you're ready to do more.
Yeah. Yeah. So next week, we're going to delve into kind of the different manifestations of it and different ways that you can reframe your thoughts and different ways that you can sort of deal with that so that you can get a little bit more quickly to the point where you're saying, okay, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to push through to that next level and level up, right? Because that's what it is. It is, it's that signal. It's your check engine light in a good way. Saying it's time to change, time to move, time to go.
Yeah, and we're going to delve more into Mel Robbins and Malcolm Gladwell.
So stay tuned for that piece of it as we, again, attempt to give you some more tools and things to help push yourself a little bit more and guide you through that as your emotional Sherpas that we are. So, excellent. Well, thank you very much, my dear. And that is going to do it for us. So again, thank you for listening. Keep on creating, keep on writing, keep on pushing yourself to that next level, because that's where you belong.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@writeoutloudpod.com or Christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.